apart from the economic survey series, we are also continuing the Prelims 2025 free current affairs series. In the previous videos, you have seen the topic of pollution and alternative sources of energy, also called the non-conventional sources of energy. I hope you like the series. We'll be continuing from where we left there. And the next important theme is plastic pollution. When we're discussing this theme, we are not just looking at the pollution aspect of it. We're also considering the science behind it, the policy behind it, the economics behind it. In fact, we are looking at the topic of plastics in a comprehensive way, which this video aims to make this a one-stop solution. Okay, moving on. How am I structuring this video? I will be going by the trend analysis of the topic. I am picking up questions from various UPSC examinations, not just the civil services exam. You also have CAPF, NDA, wherein you have a lot of these questions on the science as well as the environmental aspects of plastic. So if you have to categorize the questions, I'll be looking at plastic as an environmental concern, plastic in everyday life and its hazards, scientific and technological aspects of plastic, policy matters and sustainability matters associated with plastic, and of course, what are the global level commitments made by different countries? What is India's stance on dealing with this issue? This is how I will be structuring the topic. But before all of that, we have to understand the basic science as to why we need plastic in the first place. Let's look at it. Now, this video is everything that you need to know about plastics from UPSC's perspective. Okay, firstly, what is a plastic? Technically, if you see, plastic is nothing but a polymer. What is a polymer? Basically, consider it like a unit. A unit of a chemically combined substance, when joined together, gives a certain structure. You might be wondering, if you are a chemistry student, how exactly is the unit, which is also called the monomer, different from a molecule? The difference here is monomers can't exist independently. They have to react. They react, in fact. That reaction is what makes them, chemically viable, and they combine together and become plastics. In the case of plastics. But molecules need not be like that. They're like a bead in a necklace. Okay? They can be placed on a table just like that without reacting. But monomers are not like that. They have to react and they combine together. And this combination can be in two ways. Again, this is a question that was asked in the UPSC previous year questions. Plastic monomers, or the units which combine together to create a polymer called a plastic, can happen in two ways. They combine linearly, and they can also give what we know as cross-linking polymers. In the first place, if you are talking about the linear polymers are those which are relatively weak in terms of the strength. And cross-linking polymers are the ones which are very strong and heat resistant, because they have strong bonds, as you can see here. That's how they will become strong. So simply put, polymer means, poly here means many monomer units. They combine together and create a stable structure. Polymers are divided into natural as well as synthetic. When we are talking about the plastics, we are talking about the synthetic polymers. I hope this gives you context of the science behind plastics. Does it mean we don't have any natural polymers? No, we do have natural polymers. For example, proteins. Should we discuss about proteins in the context of polymers? That would slightly digress the situation. We're not discussing the topic of polymerization. We're basically talking about plastics. And since plastics are polymers, we're just sticking to that context. Okay, moving on. If you have to categorize the types of plastics, you can see that there are two kinds: thermoplastic and thermostatic. What does it mean? Simply put, this is the kind of plastic which you can melt and reshape them, more like, let's say, butter. butter can be heated and it can, butter or ghee can be resolidified, right? Thermoplastics are like that. Thermosetting plastics are slightly different. They are much more, what do I say, very strong, very rigid. It is not easy to melt them. You have this plastics like food, microwave ovens, whatever you put the utensils in the microwave ovens, they are mostly thermostatic plastics. They are not something that can be melted easily. If you take a look at the NCERT textbooks, there are two thermosetting plastic polymers which are very materials basically, which are very important. They're also asked in the previous year questions of NDA, CAPF, and exams like that. Those are melamine and bakelite. Where are these used? The use cases are also asked in the previous year questions. For example, melamine is a fire retardant paint. It is something that is used in paints to avoid, the material to be subjected to fire. So it is fire resistant. It's also useful in the construction industry. You also see some switches, right, which are very resistant to heat and they don't conduct electricity as such. So they are poor conductors of electricity and heat, and that's the reason why they are used. Remember, melamine and bakelite, they are thermosetting polymers, plastics basically. These are the two kinds of plastics. One is the thermoplastic, and the other one is thermosetting. Another important point is melamine was recently found in milk adulteration cases. You can get a question on this front as well. These facts need to be remembered. Okay? Now, in this context, you might be wondering, like, if thermoplastics can be easily melted and they can be recycled so easily, does that mean that they can be recycled? Every thermoplastic plastic can be easily recycled? Not necessarily. Here is where we have to understand some more points. Thermoplastics. What did I say? They have weaker bonds. They are relatively malleable, and we assume that they are easy to recycle. But that's not the case. There are some, thermoplastics like PVC. They are chemically very stable, and because of this reason, they are not easy to recycle. Even though structurally they are malleable, chemically they are not. Chemically they are very stable. They contain chlorine. For example, there is another thermoplastic called styrofoam, which is basically 95% of air. Like whatever you get in packaging materials, right? Those are very difficult to recycle as well. When you break them down, they become what we call as secondary microplastics. But what are microplastics? More about that in the further slides. Now, what are some important kinds of thermoplastic and where can you use them? See here, I've already told you that thermoplastic means something that can be melted and reused. Take a look at this plastic bottle. It's something that can be recycled. In this, you have other kinds of thermoplastics. Let's say, for example, polythene. All the carry bags that you see, the thickness varies, of course. The carry bags are made of polythene. And then you also have the PVC pipes. It is also one kind of a thermoplastic. Of course, depending on the density they have, they can be hard pipes as well as soft pipes. But chemically, they are thermoplastics only. Okay? You can also take one more example, PET bottles, polyethylene terephthalate. They do not contain polyethylene. Please note this point. This fact was asked many times in different examinations. Okay. Now, recently, what current affairs is associated with this point? The Vice President of our country inaugurated a Center for Carbon Fiber and Prepregs. What do you mean by this? You just need to be aware, right? You have to know what these terms mean. Like I told you, plastics have multiple use cases. And one of the use cases that they are used in what we know as technical textiles. Let's say in our aeroplanes or in automobile industry. Because of the tenacity they are used in those industries. And of course, the fact is, it is difficult to degrade plastic. Just keep this point in mind. But these points, like if you have to understand what these terms mean, pre-prex means is something that is used in technical textiles. Sometimes word association is good enough for you to mark the right answer. That's the reason I'm giving it here. What is a carbon fiber? Graphite. What is a graphite? It is a material that is associated with carbon. If I have to go into the chemistry part of it, it's again going to make the video lengthier. Just understand that this is a material associated with carbon. More about carbon and its compounds and the various isotopes, etc., that are associated with it will be discussed in the future videos. I'm not going beyond the scope of plastics in this video. Okay, moving on. Now that we understood what are the different kinds of plastics, the science associated with it in a very rudimentary way so that you can mark your answers right in the prelims exam, let's understand why exactly are we using plastics in the first place. Why not metals? See, metals have the propensity to react. They get corroded. They can, cause odor or smell because they react. Which is exactly why you use plastics, because they don't. If you store food in plastic containers, they don't react. If you use any metal devices and medical devices, they have the danger of reacting with that and it can harm the patient. So medical devices mostly use plastics, and the medical industry is one of the largest creator of plastic waste. Secondly, when you're talking about the problems associated with the plastic, like I've just been discussing, it takes up a huge space because they are not degradable. Secondly, they cannot be recycled either. If you try to burn them, the molten plastic causes some extremely harmful fumes, which is very dangerous for human beings. Let's say if you bury them, just like you do for the organic waste, right? You take them to burial grounds or landfills, as you can call them, and just dig the ground and bury them. But the problem is, again, they're not organic materials. They cannot be, degraded. They're non-biodegradable. So the only option that is left for us is recycling. And that's where you have sustainable development goal, where they say triple R strategy: reduce, reuse, and recycle plastic. The reduce, reuse, and recycle plastic. Why is it like this? Why are they not degradable? Because the very purpose with which they are created by the innovators at that point of time is they're designed for durability, and that's the reason they are not degradable. What are the issues associated with plastics? What are the issues associated with plastics? In this section, we will be discussing 1. Microplastics, 2. Marine pollution, land and soil pollution, and the issues associated with the burning of plastic, that is, how they cause air pollution. Okay. Now let's begin with microplastics. Microplastics, like the name itself indicates, is very tiny in size, less than probably 5 nanometers. Okay. So there are two kinds of microplastics: directly, which is commercially produced by the industry, something that you would notice in oil or like toiletries, or let's say our sunscreens, etc., all the cosmetic products. You would find microplastics in them, also in our toothpaste. And the secondary source of microplastics is what you would notice after the breakdown of the thermoplastics, like PVC pipes, etc. The problem with the secondary microplastics is we can't trace them. Even in the primary cases, like at least we can go to the industry experts and say probably you can put some regulations. The problem with the secondary microplastics is that they enter into our water systems, etc., and cause a significant shift in our DNA level. That's the problem. When it comes to marine pollution, they enter into the oceans. Ocean marine life is affected either through bioaccumulation or when humans consume the associated meat. Let's say they eat fish infested with all this plastic waste. Even human beings are affected. The quality of soil and the quality of land all of that are affected by plastic. And burning of plastics is not an option like we've already discussed because it's very harmful. So how do we deal with this? This is where we have to understand the global regulations and treaties associated with plastic waste, which I think you must have already covered in your basic classes. But just a quick overview. We have, broadly speaking, certain regulations at global level like Basel Convention, Stockholm Convention for persistent organic pollutants, and then you have the UNEP's ongoing global plastic treaty, which has not come to a conclusion. Apart from this, are there anything else? Yes, of course there are. So in 2012, to address this issue of marine waste, there was a global partnership on plastic pollution, the Rio Plus 20 Summit in 2012. You just have to, memorize these facts and understand the context. The Marpol Convention of 1973, you might get a chronology-based question also. Please understand that this is one of the first treaties associated with plastic waste from ships. Then you also have Basel Convention, which regulates, a lot of rich countries, especially the OECD countries, where the average per capita income is so high that they don't want all this plastic waste and hazardous waste movement in their countries. So what these countries do is outsource that plastic waste management to poorer countries, let's say in Asia or Africa. And that has affected the lives of people living in those areas, the least developing countries. And therefore, this Basel Convention has probably laid down all these regulations where it regulates the hazardous waste movement, but it has not been enforced strictly, and that's one of the major criticisms of this convention. There are other minor and major initiatives that I am pasting here. I would be, putting this document in the Telegram channel as well, which the description for which will be in the description box below. You can download it from there. These are pretty old news, but you never know. UPSC can revive all those old news and ask questions in terms of chronology also. Apart from this, are there any current affairs associated with it? Let's look at them. So, there is a report by an organization called Earth Action, which came up with a report called Plastic Overshoot Day. What does it mean? Basically, it means Earth is running out of the ability to handle the plastic. And this is based on an index that they created called the Mismanaged Waste Index. India's mismanaged waste is almost as high as 68.62%, which says that we are not managing our plastic waste judiciously. You can also use the statistics in your mains examination to quote this as a substantiation point when you say that we are mismanaging our plastic waste and the need for better enforcement and policy measures. This is one news. Is there any other news? Yes, of course. David Baker. This person won a Nobel Prize in Chemistry because he understood how the breakdown of plastics can be impacted and designed by computational protein design. See, basically he used AI models to understand what proteins are involved in the breakdown of plastics. So this is a sort of a very big research because if we understand how we can use our bioenzymes or our proteins to break down the plastics which are considered to be non-biodegradable, it is a breakthrough for the plastic industry. What is the name of the AI model? It's called AlphaFold 2. In the same context, many newspapers gave certain facts. What are the facts? What are the most abundant proteins that are available in the world? In the animal kingdom, it's collagen. And in the entire biosphere, there is a very big, chemical name which I think most of us would not remember. So the short form of that is rubisco. This is one of the most abundantly available proteins in the entire biosphere. Just reiterating, most abundant proteins in the animal world is collagen, and in the biosphere is rubisco. Okay? So these are the current affairs associated with that topic. Moving on. Now, here are some of the most commonly used plastics. So most of these plastics are actually thermoplastics, meaning they are chemically very stable and therefore very difficult to recycle and reuse. Okay. And since they are very harmful, we are supposed to use certain alternatives for this. Questions are no longer asked by UPSC on this. Maybe we have had many questions on this. Questions are asked on the other aspect of the alternatives for this, that is biodegradable plastics. Let's say you're using all the plastic cups for tea and coffee, right, single-use plastics, and they're coated with something called a biodegradable plastic. FSSAI rating will be given, and it will be called a food-grade plastic. What do you mean by this food-grade plastic? It just means that that plastic is not harmful. It can be degraded even if it goes into our body. What is that? Please remember this name very carefully. It can be asked. PLA means polylactic acid. Please remember this name, polylactic acid. You also have PHA, which is used in the medical industry as an alternative to the plastics that are already used for stitching up the wounds, etc. PHA. And then you also have another alternative called PBT, which is basically an alternative for styrofoam. It is compostable, meaning it can degrade when you bury it in the soil. This is used in the packaging industry. So these three names, it's very likely that they will ask questions on this. What are this? PLA, PHA and PBT. These are biodegradable plastics. Please note this point. Okay. Apart from this, traditionally we need to know some names which have a high health risk. Vinyl chloride, benzene, butadiene, styrene, bisphenol. Bisphenol was already asked. Not just bisphenol, there are other chemicals called endocrine disruptors. We have two kinds of hormonal system called exocrine and endocrine. And plastics have the ability to impact the endocrine functioning of our hormonal system, endocrine aspect. Okay? What is exocrine and endocrine? That is beyond the scope of this video. That is probably dealt in the biology class. We'll get back to that later. But just remember, if any chemicals associated with the plastic industry and their link to hormones there, the most likely they will be associated with the endocrine system because they are endocrine disruptors. They are so tiny that they'll get deposited on these organs and they disrupt the functioning. Okay? Mostly they will be associated with what we know as polycarbonate plastic. If it is difficult for you to remember so many names, just mark it up. There are certain PYQs asked on this topic. We'll get back to that later. So just remember these names. Okay. Then we were talking about the Stockholm Convention, right? Basically, what I told you, there are certain chemicals, even though they're malleable, that is, they can be bent easily, they can be reshaped easily. Chemically, they are so stable and non-degradable that they exist practically forever. They are called forever chemicals. Since they are called forever, they are called persistent pollutants. Some of actually Stockholm's this convention, Stockholm Convention, deals with organic pollutants. But since some of the molecules, though they're very stable, they are also addressed in the same class of Stockholm Convention. For example, PCB, dioxins and furans, PFCs, DDT, PFA. These names, they're all associated with the Stockholm Convention directly and indirectly. So they basically impact our health. How, etc. you can read from here. In all this list, the dioxins and furans, these are the most important ones because they will be produced when you burn plastic. They are extremely dangerous. They are produced when you burn PVC pipes or any material associated with PVC. Okay. Current affairs. Recently, Singapore authorities, food authorities, they've actually sent back India's spice products because they found something called ethylene oxide. This can be asked in the question. So how can UPSC twist this? Does it mean that we are not supposed to use this at all? Or what is ethylene oxide in the first place? It is something that is used as an artificial ripening agent in our fruit industry, like food and horticulture industry. Is it completely banned in India? Not really. It's okay to use, but within a limit, 100 ppm. But it is not okay to use when you directly bring it in contact with the fruits, because it's a cancer-causing agent beyond a certain threshold. Therefore, FSSAI has very strict regulations. But the Singapore Food Authorities has recalled this spice product, ethylene oxide. Just remember this. We can get a question on this as well. Moving on. Now, let us take a look at some previous year questions that are asked on this, because it's a very simple, straightforward topic. And let us, see some questions on how they are asked. Take a look at this question from 2024, where they said that many chewing gums found in the market are considered a source of environmental pollution. Let's say it's a possibility. Many chewing gums contain plastic as a gum base. Again, a possibility. Now, since they contain gum as a plastic, the base is plastic, of course, it is a source of pollution. We have discussed that in the topic of micropollution. So, both statement 1 and 2 are correct, and it explains it. Another question. Take a look at this. Microplastics 50 mm of length. If they are 50 mm, they are no longer micro. So UPSC doesn't expect you to remember numbers. They generally change these numbers, etc. It's very insignificant. You have to understand the logic. Okay. Again, if you are not sure, let's say if you remove the first option, you're only left with one option. But even in that case, if you're not sure, take a look at this. Normal plastic and microplastics both are biodegradable. If that is the case, this whole video is no longer an issue. Like, there is no need for this kind of a video. If you remove that, you are still left with two options. So you can pretty well, guess with your commonsensical understanding of this topic, questions like this. Take a look at this question. The main environmental problem associated with plastic pollution is soil erosion. How is plastic associated with soil erosion? It's a very indirect cause. The main problem of plastic pollution is that it is non-degradable. It will affect oceans. It will affect the land. We have already discussed what are all the problems associated with plastic pollution. Second statement says Montreal Protocol aims to reduce the production and usage of single-use plastics. Possible. But let's see. Actually, the question was not asked in this only one, only two format. It is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 format. So this is probably an error from my side. In the original question, if you remove this statement, you will directly arrive at the answer. Even if that is not the case, let's see and use our understanding for this. Burning plastic waste can help reduce plastic pollution. How is it going to help? Not really, right? Is it the way we address plastic waste? Can you burn microplastics? Can you even, capture all the microplastics that are produced? Not really. So how is that a solution? So for a fact, you know that two statements are at least wrong. So you cannot have only 2 and only 3 as an option, even if this is the question that was asked. Montreal Protocol aims to reduce the production in single-use plastics. It can be possible, right? So only one is the answer. So this is a fact that you need to know, which is covered in your basic textbooks, etc. But just by using common sense, you can address questions like this. There are some more, questions that were asked in your previous years. For example, bisphenol. It's a very famous question because a lot of people were stumped. Where is it used? Like I've told you, if you go through your basic NCERT textbooks, you will find the answer. Polycarbonate. I'll be pasting some information here. You can download from the Telegram channel and see this. The next thing, phthalates. In the toy industry, toy industry has been time and again been in news because the Chinese import of toys, Chinese toys, were not only harming our economy but also they are very dangerous for children. Why? You would see here. And in news, if you find this kind of any specific chemicals which are considered to be extremely harmful for human beings, those are the areas where you have to spend your time to understand it better. And that's the reason I'm giving these points here. Triclosan, another question that was asked. Where do you see this? Okay, it's an antimicrobial agent commonly used in soaps, toothpaste, etc. Okay, you can download the PPT and you can see the description here, or you can pause the video and see the description here. The intent of this video is to tell that with minimal understanding of the concepts, you will be pretty much in a comfortable position, guess many questions. So you don't have to worry if you don't know the chemistry behind it. It just requires certain common sense for scoring well in this topic. Finally, there were questions in other exams like NDA or CAPF on the basics, types of plastics, thermoplastics, thermosetting plastics. Which of the following is a thermosetting plastic? Direct question, me and mine. So, if you have to understand what examiner is looking here, they are trying to know your basics and they're testing basically on material properties, their applications, the environmental concerns, what we have discussed in the previous slides. That brings us to the end of this lecture here. The policy matters and the other measures that are taken by India will be discussed in detail in the context of environmental legislations. I hope you enjoyed the video. With an aim to make VKIS the platform for your Prelims 2025 current affair needs, I'm trying to bring up more videos in this series. Apart from this current affair series, you also have the economic survey and the budget series. Please like, share and subscribe for more. That's it for now. Thank you.